Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined by author Joe Hill to talk about his latest novel, King Sorrow, and horror villains, or story is only as good as its villain. So, welcome.
Stephanie, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here, and just to get my own bias out of the way right up front, I think that's true. That a story is only as good as its villain, at least in the horror genre. Generally, pretty good rule of thumb.
Yeah. I don't know. Horror has so many good villains. I feel like it's something we're the best at, right?
There have been more movies made out of Dracula than any other fictional character. So that says something, right? That people
Yeah.
can't get enough of that character. That antagonist looms bigger than so many heroes. Robin Hood, King Arthur, Spider-Man. Been way more movies about Dracula than Spider-Man. Superman. It's possible, if I'm wrong about this, it is faintly possible there have been more films made about Sherlock Holmes. So he might be the
Interesting.
one fictional character that edges out Dracula.
Interesting. I would like to see, yeah, the numbers on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is just something so compelling about a horror villain. But also, your latest novel, King Sorrow, would you mind
Yeah.
telling our listeners a little bit
A, a
about the
slim, a
book?
skinny little read of 900 pages.
It's easy breezy.
I just saw a list. I saw a list online of it said the big horror honker is back. And they did talk a little bit about King Sorrow, but they were talking about in the 80s there were all these books that were like the size of encyclopedias that were
Hmm.
horror novels. The horror genre had this explosion of the big honker. And then that sort of stopped. But this list was sort of arguing that the honkers have crept back over the last few years. And I think I'm trying to remember some of the ones that were on it. House of Leaves, The Passage, Our Share of the Night, I think was on it. Wanderers by Chuck Wendig was on
Yeah.
it, I'm pretty sure. Um, Nosferatu and the Firemen were on it, so that was pretty cool. I can't remember the other ones. But I have a friend who says that a good book is always too short, and a bad book is always too long,
Yeah.
regardless of page length.
And I mean, when you're writing the book, do you have a gauge on like what that is? Because I feel like King Sorrow, and maybe it's because it's split up into different sections, that it just
Yeah,
always felt fresh. Like it always felt like, okay, we're switching perspectives. And also it felt like every single section was its own like high
mini
octane
novel.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what my initial conception was. I don't think I realized when I got into it how long I would be working on it or how big it was. And if I had known, maybe my resolve would have failed. Maybe I would have wilted in the face of it. But you know, I did know. So I remarried in 2018, and I knew that the next novel was going to be dedicated to my wife, and I think I wanted to impress her. And the trouble a guy can get into when he tries to impress his best girl, and so I got into it, and just for people just hearing about King Sorrow, the sort of log line on it is six friends in the late 1980s bring a dragon through into our reality to help them out of a fix they're in, to get them out of a tight corner. And then they wind up saddled with this dragon, King Sorrow, for the rest of their lives. And every year they have to pick someone new, some new target to point this dragon at and destroy, or he'll take one of them. So they have to pick a yearly sacrifice. But this isn't like a nice, neat sacrifice where someone is, killed on a stone altar. I mean, aiming a dragon at someone is like aiming a cruise missile at them. So wherever King Sorrow goes, he spreads a lot of devastation. And I think I knew that when I started that each character was going to have their own sort of standalone story, that we'd get there'd be a section of the book for each character where we'd be seeing things from their point of view, and the other characters would sort of be sidekicks. And maybe I thought each of them would be like short stories, but that isn't really how it worked out. I mean, like part two is an air disaster thriller
Yeah.
featuring a girl named Allison Shiner. It's like a mini novel. It's pretty hell for leather. It goes pretty nonstop, and it's this big action spectacle in the air with a dragon fighting F-16s out of the window. And I don't know how if I ever imagined that was really only going to be like 30 pages.
I mean, it was so fun and it definitely kept the pace going. And I will say, I feel like I definitely had the naivety of all the characters in the first section where I was like, obviously, you take this deal and you just pick like a bad person every year. How
Right.
bad
It's
could it
easy.
be? Like, I was right there with the characters. So this was a journey for me where I was like, oh, maybe I guess that would be pretty bad. And then
I
you get
actually
into a pickle and you're like,
Yeah, I actually think, just in terms of pacing, the longer the book is, the more aggressively it has to be paced. So the longer a book is, the faster it has to move. You have to have, a lot of peril and a lot of interesting, desperate situations, and you know, if the book is only 100 pages long, paradoxically, you can actually slow down. You can have sort of meditative, quiet stretches of 15 or 20 pages because the reader, is like, okay, nothing much is happening here, but the book is so short, I'm going to keep reading anyway. Because it's going to go somewhere, and I'm going to have a revelation. I'm going to have an epiphany, and I'm going to be deeply moved. It will be a great experience. But I think when a book is 900 pages long, if the reader feels like we've gone deep inside someone's head and we're sort of in a long contemplative moment with them, there's the risk they might lose hope. They might look at how much book is still left ahead of them and think, wow, this is a really slow story. I don't know if I can make it through to the end. So you have to be on the reader's side. You have
yeah.
to, you have to feel like, what would I want if I was the reader? I'd want things to move. So that's with a big book. I think part of the job is, you got to keep it cranking, keep the pedal
Yeah.
down.
And I mean, with a book like this that is set over several decades, like, how
Yeah,
did
90,
you
it goes to 20. I think it goes to 2016, doesn't it, or
Yes.
2017 or something, and it starts in 1990. So it's 25 years.
Yeah. Saying, how do you keep track of all that?
I didn't keep track of it all. I mean, I didn't have a spreadsheet or
Oh,
anything. I didn't have like a murder wall,
a
with all the
pegboard.
characters connected by red strings and stuff. And you know, um, what I did do is I worked on the book for a long time.
Mhm.
So I believe that the first pages of the book might have existed as early as late 2018, maybe. I'd have to check. And that there was a draft of the book. I believe the first draft of the book was finished in 2022.
Yeah.
And here we are in the fall of 2025. It's been a while, and it's been a long process of sort of finishing one draft and then going through and sort of looking, does the chronology play right, what is each character doing in each of these isolated stories of horror or adventure. And I work with great editors too, who
Yeah.
catch it when I screw up, and can point out, for the next book, Hunger, which is going to be out in 2026. I actually hired a research assistant,
Oh, cool.
like a big grown up writer, and the guy went through page by page to make sure I didn't screw things up, which is kind of awesome. So I feel like I'm a real pro now.
Was that a very different experience then, having someone go through?
It's been awesome so far.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone likes the book. It's a historical novel. It's a ghost story.
Ooh.
It's something I know how to do pretty well. It's a ghost story, but then it's also a big step outside the comfort zone because it's set in the 18th century.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I will say, yeah, when I was reading King Sorrow, I forget what section it was. It was the troll section.
Yeah.
But
Like an
there's a
Indiana
mention
Jones thing. Two
Yeah.
characters. two characters go with a troll deep into his cave to try to come back with some treasure that they desperately need. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a mention of Love Island, and I was like, "That's a show that's on now." And I
I
look
know,
and
but
I'm
Love
like,
Island's been around for a long time. I
"I
think
know."
maybe that takes place in like 2006 or something, that part, 2007
Yeah.
or something. And yeah, well, you a big Love Island fan?
No, but that just had me Googling. I'm like, "Love Island in the 2000s?" And I'm like, "Oh, it was a British show, like, in the
Yeah, it started as a
2000s."
British show, and I've actually never seen Love
Me
Island
neither.
US, but I love the UK version. I watched like at least I watched the first 3 or 4 seasons of it.
I love that. I wanted to ask, like, when was this a dragon novel, or did it start out that way?
Well, let me just go back to Love Island
Okay,
for a
sorry,
second.
go.
Wouldn't Love Island be a great setting for a horror film?
Yes.
It's like you've got 8 guys, 8 hot guys, 8 unbelievably hot girls, and what they don't know is one of them is basically Michael Myers. Could be
You know what?
awesome.
I'm reading
Yeah.
it. I'm watching it.
It was always a dragon. I always knew that King Sorrow was a dragon, that it was gonna be a story about a dragon. I when I was about 10, my parents took turns reading me The Hobbit. And with due respect to Tolkien fans, and this might be controversial. I still think Smaug the dragon is a better villain than Sauron or Saruman. That the most interesting villain is right there in The Hobbit before we get to the big Lord of the Rings stories. And I love the depiction of Smaug, and in particular, there's a scene where Bilbo is in Smaug's cave looking to steal some treasure, and the great serpent knows that he's there, but he can't see him because Bilbo's got the ring on. He's invisible, and so they're talking, and they're having almost like a fencing match. They're almost fencing with each other verbally, but you know that Smaug is waiting for Bilbo to accidentally give away his location so he can chomp the Hobbit in half. And at 10, I was completely enthralled by that. I just thought, I didn't know that fiction could bring you to a place like this. Fiction could make you feel this intensely. I just That scene is a masterpiece of suspense, and so Smaug in a lot of ways is my favorite fictional character. More than
Interesting.
almost any other character in any other novel. I just think the dragon from Tolkien, it doesn't get better than that character.
I mean, I can see that, and they're so smart.
They're so clever and they have a
Yeah.
sense of humor. And they're so powerful. And I mean, I think that's exciting. I think I realized early on that I was gonna be able to put the dragon in a situation where he's, battling attack helicopters and tanks and stuff. And I just thought, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be like a giant monster movie. And every scene that King Sar was in was so much fun to write. He was, right from the start, he was just a great character to spend time with. And I always enjoyed the way he verbally went at all of the 6 friends that we meet at the beginning. The way he teases them and plays with them like a cat with a mouse.
Oh, he's so fun. And I mean, when he's introduced, I will say as a reader, you're like, "Oh no, these people are immediately outwitted. Where are we gonna go
Yeah,
from here?" Like they're stuck. And I wanted to ask because I was looking at the list of villains we're gonna be talking about, and I feel like something they all have in common is they all have great introductions. They all make their presence known. They all have great first impressions. So I guess like what was your thinking on like introducing the reader to King Sorrow, that first scene where we see him?
I thought he when he comes in, we have to feel like, Hamlet walking onto the stage, or, a great performer. I mean, you want it to be like the moment in the theater when the big star walks out, and everyone is just, yes, now it's on. So that was what mattered to me the most, that it felt like he was full on right from the start. But also I kind of already had his voice in my head. I sort of
Yeah.
already knew what he sounded like, so it was just a matter of getting to him.
He was just so fun, so sassy, so
He's pretty
British.
sassy.
British
He
and
talks a lot
sassy.
of good trash.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's one of the characters says later that that words are one of the weapons that dragons have at their disposals, as much as flame or their giant tail. Their ability to twist words and to use language against, their
Mhm.
adversaries is one of their
Right.
great powers.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a big fan of Elmore Leonard, the crime writer, the Detroit crime writer Elmore Leonard. I think Elmore Leonard is the gold standard for great dialogue. And Elmore Leonard talks about, he talked about when he was writing, when he was writing a story and he brought a character on, he'd say the character had to have interesting talk. I had to enjoy hearing their dialogue. If they didn't, I wrote them out of the book.
Yeah.
I didn't have any use for them, and I, as a writer, I always want that too. And another reason why actually King Sorrow is a long book, it's somewhat deceptive. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of people talking. There's a lot of banter in the course of King Sorrow. And that takes up a lot of real estate on, it fills pages, but it's actually fairly zippy to read. I place a lot of faith in dialogue. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the two things I trust most: dialogue and action.
Absolutely. And I mean, not only are we dealing with, King Sorrow being sassy, we're also dealing with this group of friends and their evolving friendship over 25 years with
Yeah, and
this thing
and
hanging over them.
you know, one of the inspirations for the book is the classic by Donna Tartt, The Secret History, which is about a bunch of college friends who get together. They're all, really, intelligent and unusual, and they do something terrible and it destroys their lives. So this is for my generation, The Secret History is one of these great touchstones, one of these central books that has grown, and its reputation has grown with every passing year. So there's a little bit of the secret history, especially in the first couple hundred pages of King Sorrow, which
Yeah.
is set at Rackham College in coastal Maine. But also, like, I'm not as sophisticated as Donna Tartt. I'm sort of a little bit of a rube, and I have to admit that sometimes I was thinking of King Sorrow as what if someone did Friends, a new season of Friends, but as a horror movie. So it's sort of like if you can imagine Friends reinvented as a 16 episode horror film, a 16 to a season of horror instead of a season of comedy. That's kind of what I was aiming for with King Sorrow.
Okay. Well, I love that. I mean, that is the reference for the podcast. Joey putting The Shining in the freezer. So,
That's right, he did do that. I remember that episode. Classic.
and that's yeah, that's the scale we use on the podcast when we recommend books. Is it a freezer book? Is it a fridge book? Is it a room temperature book with scariness,
Wow.
not
Stephanie,
quality?
I don't think I knew that. I don't think I realized that's where the title of the of course that's where the title of the pod. I can't believe I didn't realize this until right now. Of course that's where it comes from. Ooh, well, we're definitely going to talk about books you have to put in the freezer.
Which is good. I had a question as someone who has not read The Dark Tower. I wanted
Yeah,
to know if there was a small reference to it.
there is a Dark
Um,
Tower reference. There is a Dark
okay,
Tower reference in
in the first book. Okay, so I
yeah.
wasn't like out
In
of line thinking.
in King Sorrow, there is a moment where some of the language echoes some language people will be familiar with from the Dark Tower. Yeah, there's a lot of no big secret, my dad Stephen King, the I come from a family of writers. My mom Tabitha King is a really accomplished novelist. My brother Owen, terrific writer. His wife Kelly Braffett, terrific writer of thrillers and fantasy, and so the whole family is sort of, books are our love language in a lot of ways. And one of the one of the sort of Easter eggs hidden in King Sorrow is every part of the book is named after someone else in the family's work. So
Oh,
so part one, The Briars, is the title of the last book that I wrote that I couldn't sell. So before Heart Shaped Box, the last novel I wrote that I shopped everywhere and I couldn't sell was a book called The Briars. That was actually probably not that good a book. It was probably not a really successful book, but it had some interesting stuff in it, including this rich kid's estate, the Briars, which I just stuck into King Sorrow. Um, Part two is called Fright or Flight, which is an anthology that my dad edited with Bev Vincent. Part three is Double Feature, which is the title of my brother's first novel. Part four is The Trap, which is the title of my mother's second novel. And the final part of the book is Save Yourself, which is the title of a great crime novel by Kelly Braffett.
Oh, I love that as an ode.
Yeah.
Kind of everyone
I
gets.
don't think it matters whether people notice or not, but I thought it was sort of a funny thing to stick in there and a way to sort of say something about how much I've been influenced by all these great writers who are part of my life.
I also wanted to ask about the Arthurian. We have
Stuff.
Arthur and we have Gwen in this
So
book.
so the tech bros these days tell you don't go to college. You're wasting your time if you go to
Mm.
college, you know? Don't waste your time in a liberal arts institution. Well, I went to a liberal arts college, and in my sophomore year, I took Beth Darlington's class on Arthurian legend. And that was a terrific course. I can't remember if it was 2 semesters or just one, but we really covered, the whole body of Arthurian work from, the very early stuff from, Mallory all the way to modern day incarnations of King Arthur and the Round Table. And I always knew that course was going to pay off big for me someday. And fast forward 30 years and boom, I was able to stick it all into King Sorrow. It was just a matter of time until I made that education work for me. So, there you go. Liberal arts education. A lot of people are dissing it. Worked out great for me. Study
It
King
paid
Arthur.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
study. Don't be afraid to study poetry or King Arthur or Shakespeare or dance or painting. I remain unconvinced that AI is going to replace the need for humans making art for other humans, and I believe that to be that being a full human being includes making space in your life for things like poetry, for things like theater. Even if that never becomes your profession, it may enrich you in ways that you did not suspect, that you could not have anticipated.
I mean, absolutely. I agree.
The world is not suffering because people have read too much poetry.
No.
The various problems that exist in our society, that exist in America, that we're struggling with, that you see on social media every day, that didn't happen because people spent too much time reading poetry.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, ran over. Old person ran over.
I
Shakes my
had
cane. Shakes my cane to the 21st century.
I had two questions from Patreon supporters.
Okay.
One is from Rex, who says, "Over the last decade, has there been a horror villain you have read that you would like to see adapted to screen?"
Has there been a horror villain over the last few years that I would like? There's a lot of horror fiction I've read over the last few years that I would love to see adapted for film. I'm trying to think though, were those stories dominated by a clear villain, a sort of larger than life villain, um, who was central to it? You know, there was a vampire motorcycle gang in Richard Lang's Rovers, and I'd love to spend some time with that motorcycle gang. But also, I don't know if the heroes of the book, if we can really call them good guys. They're not sort of, they are monsters. The plot of Rovers is basically, what if Lenny and George from Of Mice and Men became vampires back in the 1930s? And by the 1970s, they were still living on America's back roads, slaughtering drifters and drinking their blood to stay alive. And those are our protagonists, a sort of Lenny and George in 1976, but they're both vampires. And then George falls in love with a human. I guess they're the heroes, but they do kill a lot of innocent people because they have needs.
Yeah.
They have thirsts that have to be quenched. So Rovers would be great. I'd love to see an adaptation of Tananarive Dew's The Reformatory, which I think is one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
very best horror novels of the 21st century. Maybe just one of the best novels, period, of the
Well,
21st century.
and another tome, another giant doorstopper.
Not to be that was in that list I told you about honkers.
Yeah.
Big The Reformatory was one of the honkers as well. Massive,
Okay.
massive book.
Okay.
But that's a book that's full of ghosts, but most of the ghosts are not cruel and intent.
Yeah.
In some ways it's a little bit like the ghosts in the Black Phone who are
Yeah.
frightening but don't wish people ill. The Reformatory, for those who haven't read it, is set in the Panhandle of Florida in the 1950s, and it's about a place like the infamous Dozier School for Boys, which was a reformatory that a lot of kids were sent to. Uh, I think most or all of them were black, and a lot of them were buried there. A lot of them never left the place alive. They were sent for trifling crimes or made up crimes, with no possibility of getting out until someone decided they were reformed, and a whole bunch of them didn't get out. It's a sort of a horrifying, chapter in American history, and Tananarive Due created her own reformatory along the lines of the Dozier School for Boys, and the place is haunted. I mean, it's like the Overlook Hotel, only set in the South, and
Yeah.
with a really dark, tormented past that's wired into the American history that we know and would sometimes not like to think about. Really tremendously powerful book. But that's one where I'm not sure I would say the villain. There's a great villain. The headmaster is a hideous fellow. I think his name is Trout. I think his name is
Sounds right.
Trout. It's been a while since I've read it.
Yeah.
But he's not like, he's a disgusting and tragic figure, but he's all too human. We're not talking about like, you know, Freddy Krueger, or the sort of unkillable Michael Myers or Dracula. And also, he's not a fun villain, and that's sort of, maybe if we're going to talk about, a book is only as good as its villain. One of the complexities there is that we shouldn't root for someone who's evil. And I don't want to root, as a reader, I don't want to root for the bad guy. But there is something delicious about, you know, reading a story where the villain is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think you get that with, I mean, isn't this why everyone liked the Nightmare on Elm Street films? Because secretly they were kind of, I'm not even sure they were good horror films, but they were kind of great slapstick comedies, really gory slapstick comedies, you know?
I mean, I'm a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street, but yeah, I mean, Freddy's quippiness and wittiness as he's like taunting these teenagers to their death was definitely part of the appeal,
And
for
there's
sure.
so much R-rated physical comedy, like gross out physical comedy. I mean, if you think about it, Freddy Krueger is like the little tramp of horror films. Robert Englund is like horror's Charlie Chaplin. I'm
Yeah.
I'm only sort of half kidding. The first one was serious and is really frightening, but every film after the first one came closer and closer to just outright comedy. Um, you know, Horrible comedy, black, gory comedy, but still, you went to laugh.
Yeah. And the next Patreon question I had was from Jocelyn, who wants to know, do you have a genre or subgenre that you consider a white whale, something you'd love to write in but feel nervous to tackle for some reason or another?
The genre is historical fiction. I read a lot of historical fiction. Uh, it might be a white whale, but I decided to go for it anyway, and that's so. This next book, that will be out in 2026, Hunger, is this historical novel set in the 18th century. It's a ghost story, and in some ways is maybe the most outright horror novel I've written since, like, purest horror novel I've written since Heart Shaped Box. In the sense of pretty explicitly a straightforward, bloodbath. But I had the idea about 6 or 7 years ago, and when I had the idea, I thought, oh, I want to write that, and then I thought, okay, but if you're going to write it, you have to get the history right because people really care about this stuff, and you don't want to make a fool of yourself. So I actually started researching it about 6, 7 years ago, and have been, and I'm still researching, even though I've got the first draft done. I'm still researching it. Like I said earlier, I've got this, I've got this research assistant who's a PhD candidate in Revolutionary War history and who's been a terrific help to me,
Oh,
Chris
that's
Del
awesome.
Santos. And so, so we'll see if I can do historical fiction. I've done a little historical fiction in comic books. One of the issues of Lock and Key was set during the Revolutionary War, and I wrote a silly comic book called Sea Dogs, which is about, how did we defeat, again, Revolutionary War? That's sort of my period. How did we defeat the British Navy, the greatest navy in the world? It doesn't make sense. How did our piddling little navy defeat, one of the most awesome fighting forces ever assembled by any empire in history? And I was thinking about this, and I thought the answer is werewolves. The American revolutionaries snuck werewolves onto the British ships to tear them apart from the inside. So I did this comic called Sea Dogs that was for my DC Hill House line, which is about, it's set in the, largely set in the Caribbean, and three werewolves stole away on a British ship of the line, and there's a whole mystery about who the werewolves are, and lot of a lot of sailors getting slashed up at night, and it's pretty silly, but it's a lot of fun.
It seems like a lot of fun. I was gonna say, as a historical fiction reader, is there an era that you're drawn to? Is it the Revolutionary War or is it something else?
Well, my favorite historical novels are probably the Aubrey Maturin novels by Patrick O'Brian, which are seafaring adventures. They're actually set a little bit later than the Revolutionary War. They're set during the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century. Um, Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin. Aubrey is a captain. Stephen Maturin is the ship's doctor. They are the best duo in fiction, as far as I'm concerned. They're a better pair than Holmes and Watson. And that series is so astonishingly brilliant. I mean, the first 3 or 4 books, especially, it's hard to believe they weren't written in the 19th century.
Yeah.
They were written I think the first few books were written in the 1970s, but just the language and the understanding of the time period and relationships and what life was like aboard the ship. It's very hard to believe it wasn't written by an officer from the British Navy who lived during that time period. Another favorite historical novel would be Francis Bufford's Golden Hill, and that's set in New York a little bit before the Revolution, and is, I don't know if this is a corny word to use. It's spellbinding. Just I couldn't believe it. I don't even know how someone reaches that level. Writes a book at that pitch, that level of quality. That's so far beyond anything that I can do. It's bewildering. It's like I'm like playing checkers and he's playing 8-dimensional chess from Star Trek or something.
I'll have to check those out. Those sound really interesting.
I don't know. I don't necessarily promise that they're fascinating for horror fans. I wonder what would be great for horror fans. I mean, Dan Simmons did a book called The Terror, which I haven't read, but I did watch. I did watch the AMC show, and it was fucking great. I don't know if can I say fuck on this show? I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. The Terror was fucking great. Had a stacked cast, and there was one thing about The Terror that I wasn't completely satisfied about. Okay, I had
Really?
written my own version of the story in my head after watching 2 episodes, and then it went in its own direction instead of doing the story I had worked out in my head. So I was a little unsatisfied on that basis. This ship gets, it's like 1835, 1840, and this ship of the line gets stuck in the ice because they're trying to find the Northwest Passage through the Arctic to the other side, to the Pacific Ocean. And so these British officers and this British crew gets stuck in the ice, and then something that we think might be supernatural begins killing them one by one. And I wanted it to be Frankenstein's monster. Because at the end of Shelley's Frankenstein, the monster goes off and hides himself in
Mhm.
the Arctic. And
Mhm.
so I wanted them to have accidentally stumbled upon the monster's lair, and that's why he's killing them one by one. I just thought that would be great. I think in the end, it actually turns out to be something like the Wendigo or some other, you know, Arctic creature of myth and legend, which was it's a really good show. I mean, it's a really, really good show. It just wasn't. It just it offended me by not using the idea that was magically in my head, and they somehow didn't pick up on that.
Well, I think someone's gonna listen to this and they're gonna write the Frankenstein's monster Arctic horror.
I think that would be terrific. Some people finding the monster up there. I'd watch that movie.
But we are talking about horror villains today, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think makes a villain memorable or iconic?
I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as the mask. I mean, they stuck Michael Myers in the this William Shatner mask that was sort of like not properly dyed or something. It was kind of messed up, so it was too white. Um, and when you think about it, Michael's not actually all that interesting a bad guy. He walks, he doesn't run, he doesn't say anything, he just breathes really hard. I mean, like the whole part of Michael Myers is breathing really hard and stabbing teenagers and not being killed. Why he can't be killed, I don't know. He's just a crazy guy. We've heard that he's just like some kid who killed his sister when he was little and then spent the rest of his life in a mental asylum. And what, the mental asylum made him invulnerable? That's not how it works on anyone else.
It's because he's
He's
pure
not.
evil. The
I guess he's
evilest
right.
eyes.
I guess he's pure evil, but I mean, I think it's sort of in this when John Carpenter came back in the second film, and it picks up right away in the hospital, and Michael Myers is right after her again. I he's go straight after Jamie Lee Curtis. I thought it's because he's so psychopathic. He's got that weird psychopathic strength, where he's not feeling pain, even though he's lost of blood. It doesn't matter to him. He just lives to kill. But I still thought he was a person. I still thought he was an organic man, and if you split him open and his guts fell out on the floor, he'd have to stop.
Yeah.
Um,
You could blow him up, you could
and
set him on fire, and he is
right,
just
set him, but then nothing kills him, and it doesn't never has really been explained to my satisfaction, and so, but why is he iconic? Why do we love him so much? Because the mask. It's just the cool mask. I mean, Freddy Krueger had a little more going for him because he was funny. He was really funny, and he could distort dreams, so there was all this surreal physical comedy, or not comedy, or just straight horror. Where you saw something really disturbing, and you couldn't sleep that night. But he also had the glove, so he had a whole bunch of stuff going on. There were a lot of ingredients, a lot of toppings on that pizza. His face
yeah,
kind of looked like pizza too. It's kind of like with a
yeah.
melted cheese. It's a very easy analogy. He had the pizza face, and he had the glove, and he had the quips, and he could distort dreams. So, that made him pretty iconic. I guess I think less is more, somewhat, to a degree. You know, um, we love the shark from Jaws, but he's hardly ever on the screen.
Yeah.
We love Dracula in the Bram Stoker, but he's also hardly ever on the page. We spend some time with him in the castle at the beginning, but even there, he's usually not with Harker. Harker is locked in a tower or wandering through the castle alone. He doesn't know where Count Dracula goes during the day. He doesn't know how to escape. And then, like, when Dracula gets to London, he's completely off screen. He writes taunting letters.
I find that I'm drawn to the very gray, arguably, like, are they the villain type of people? So I'm gonna say Amy Dunn, and I know a lot of people are gonna say she's not the
Oh,
villain of Gone Girl.
well. Yeah, she's the villain of Gone Girl. Sure she is.
And
You
I
know?
know some people would say Nick, and I'm gonna say Nick is just not interesting. He is very cliche in the way that he betrays Amy, and
He's a schlub.
yeah,
He's a schmuck.
he starts to feel unimportant and overwhelmed and immediately cheats on her with a younger woman,
Yeah.
and
Amy Dunn is flying that plane. I'm with you.
she is so competent in the way that she reads him and in the way that she has already taken into account our culture's obsession with missing women and immediately
Mhm.
blaming the husband and knowing that
Mhm.
her husband is incompetent and will give off red flags in all the media performances. She knows he's going to fail that test and everyone is going to think he did it. And when you're reading the book, you're reading her diary entries as
And
she's
you're
saying like,
totally like, "Oh, this is such a
yeah,
sad story. I've heard this
she's
story so many
right,
times."
I'm scared
The
for my
husband.
life. I came here and I think he might be cheating on me. And then you get to that halfway point and it says Amy Dunn and it doesn't say diary entry. It says day
Mhm.
of, and she says, I'm so much happier now that I'm dead. And she
That's
tells you
awesome.
exactly how she has framed this man for the slights against her. And she's an unreliable narrator as it is. So,
Yeah.
like, taking that into account. But she has remained iconic. Like, people are still talking about Amy Dunn to this day and her cool girl speech and the way she has masterminded this whole situation. And it isn't even until Nick gets counsel and gets a lawyer who says, you need to speak to her. Like, she is waiting for a certain message from
Right.
you.
I actually think it's interesting that you picked Gone Girl. That was a book that split the atom. It
Yeah.
changed. Publishing was not the same after Gone
No.
Girl. And there have been 1,000 books that have attempted with varying degrees to recapture the magic and the power and the thrill of Gone Girl. I mean, the book, the you'd have to go back to Silence of the Lambs to find another book that so completely changed publishing and had that kind of, you know, shattering everything that had come before and just totally making, setting you up for like, oh, I want more of this. How can I have more of this?
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's like
remember
every 20
everything.
years.
And I mean, after Gone Girl, everything was the girl on the train, the girl who did this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was finally there was AJ Finn wrote The Woman in the Window. So the girl finally got to grow up.
She was finally allowed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Amy Dunn is one of my favorite fictional characters. And I mean, even Gillian Flynn even gives her a background where her two parents were child psychologists who wrote this book series called Amazing Amy,
Oh, that's
who
right. I remember the Amazing Amy books.
right, and like Amy succeeds where she fails. Like if she quits volleyball, Amy is a volleyball star in the next book. And so you're like, I mean, I guess I could see how that could fuck someone up.
I have 5 sons. I've never wanted to write any work of nonfiction about parenting or anything like that because I've always thought, first of all, they've got to have their own space, right? Like the
Yeah.
kids should, just because I write for a living doesn't mean they should be exposed to, the public or whatever. But also, I mean, I don't know. It just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So that's my pick. Amy
It's
Dunn
an excellent.
and
That's
Gone Girl.
great pick. She's terrific. And you know something? And so here's the thing about Amy Dunn, right? She makes things happen. And that's why a great villain is, I mean, as a writer, I just feel so much easier in my mind when I know I've got a good villain to work with. Because good villains don't sit still. They make stuff happen. They make the story go.
Yeah.
The engine under the hood. Um because what do good guys do? Just sit there and wait for trouble.
They
Someone
react.
has to make
Yeah.
trouble for a
Yeah.
good guy to have anything to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was saying that, you know, the last book to have the kind of impact that Gone Girl had was Silence of the Lambs.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, I mean, Hannibal Lecter was such a gripping villain. Such a just America went Hannibal Lecter crazy after Silence of the Lambs. and Hopkins won a well-deserved Oscar for playing the part. Remember, he was only in the film for 15 minutes. You know, he's barely in the story at all. And I've always felt that like Hannibal Lecter and Darth Vader are two villains that have become less and less interesting the more we found out about them.
Like getting more into their backstory and
Yeah, we didn't need it. It was better not to know, because we could sort of invent our own stories and maybe it's information is the opposite of fear. That you're frightened of what you don't know and what you don't understand. And so the better we understood Hannibal and the better we understood Darth Vader, the less they were, were these icons of terror. Because
mhm.
because when you're 8 and you see Darth Vader for the first time, he's scary as shit. With the breathing and the big black death head helmet. That's
Mhm.
scary.
Yeah.
The red lightsaber.
What's the supplemental Hannibal Lecter information we got? Is it
Didn't we
Red
find out that Mama didn't
Dragon?
love him and Daddy didn't understand?
I
Something
don't
like
know.
that?
I'm not too well
I
versed
didn't
in the
I didn't read.
Hannibal
I think it
series.
goes back to, like, his childhood
Mm,
and his trauma or something, and
yeah.
I don't know. That's not fun.
I will say the Buffalo Bill house is near me in Shaler, Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah. The
The one in the film?
exterior. Yeah, the exterior of the Buffalo Bill house.
Well, that's cool. You ever gone out there?
I have not, but I've thought about it.
I've heard that the farmhouse in Chainsaw Massacre is now an Airbnb.
I think that's right.
It's either the farmhouse or there's a motel. Maybe that's the motel from Motel Hell.
When the new Scream was coming out, they were auctioning off like a stay at the Stu Macher house where everything goes down in the first Scream.
I'm pretty sure in Texas you can stay in a clown hotel, an evil clown hotel.
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of like how I could talk my wife into letting us stay there for a night, but I'm kind of thinking there's almost no way I can slip that one by her. I don't think she'd go for it. I'd
No.
kind of like to see, but I don't. You
What
know,
is what entails an evil clown motel?
I mean, I don't know. Just do you like go to take a pee in the bathroom and there's a clown looking through the window at you?
It's a little Hong Kong.
Yeah, I know. Right? What would be really funny is if you go in the room and you get settled and you get relaxed, and then you sit on the edge of the bed and the clown reaches out from underneath. He's been there for an hour waiting for you to sit on the edge of the bed.
Or it's that clown statue from that like babysitter urban legend.
Mm. Did you see that there's some famous ghost hunter who recently passed away, which is it's very sad, but authorities had to assure people that the Annabelle doll, the real life Annabelle doll, was not
Ah,
in the room with him when he died.
you know what? Yes, because also like I feel like they took Annabelle on tour this last summer, and I feel like every place she went to, there was crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. I had a look at I saw this story about, I thought, oh, that's terrible. But the story included a picture of the Annabelle doll. And that's how I found out the real life Annabelle doll is a Raggedy Ann.
Yeah,
It's just a Raggedy Ann doll. I mean, it's like, a little bit scarier in the movie.
yeah, yeah. They really scared her up in the movie. I actually like. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the Conjuring movies, but I would say I do like the Annabelle movies
I,
out of the Conjuring universe.
my guilty confession is I haven't actually seen the Annabelle films, but I have seen the Conjuring films, which I love.
Yeah,
Especially like the second one, which I thought handled the Enfield poltergeist pretty well.
yeah.
So do you believe in ghosts or not?
I am kind of in the I want to believe. I think I'm too skeptical, but I think part of me wants to believe that there is something more.
You talked to Paul Tremblay?
Yeah.
Okay, so Paul's a friend of mine, and we've talked a few times, and he's like a math teacher, and he's really skeptical, you know. But he told me, I asked him if he believed in ghosts, and he said that he was talking with Stephen Graham Jones. I think you've had Stephen Graham Jones on the show as well, right?
Hmm.
He's talking with Stephen Graham Jones, and he said to Stephen that he thinks it's about a 5% chance ghosts are real. And Stephen Graham Jones said, "Oh, okay, so you believe in ghosts." And Paul Tremblay was like, "Damn, I think maybe I do then. I think maybe I just got outfoxed." So
So maybe I
yeah.
do then, is what you're saying.
That's kind of where I was going with this. I wasn't sure whether I was going to say that or not, but that's kind of where I was. I think that you actually just you meant to say you don't believe in ghosts, but I think it kind of came out more like you do believe in ghosts. Actually,
I don't know, I grew up with, like, a very superstitious Mexican mom, like, like, "Don't mess with things you don't know," and I think I always have that in the back of my head, like, "Maybe there is, and I'm not gonna mess with it."
I mean, I think that's you know better cautious, right?
Yeah. I'm a cautious person.
Yeah. All right. So you got after Amy Dunn, who's your favorite? You know,
Ah, I mean, I was gonna say Dracula, and,
good pick. You got a
yeah,
favorite on-screen Dracula?
I do love Christopher Lee. I mean,
Terrific.
I
Yeah.
just think you can't go wrong with him. But I mean, I loved the book in high school. I had a mass market paperback copy of Dracula I bought at Barnes and Nobles, and I wore that thing out. I read it back to front constantly.
Your favorite
And
vampire novel?
I think it might be. And I was there during the Twilight years, you know? I was in high school when Twilight came out. Um, but I mean, just in the beginning where we have the train ride to the castle, and like you said, he's not on page or on screen often. It's all the build up and all the villagers kind of seeing where he's going and like warning him and praying over him. And you get
It's got
all this,
atmosphere.
it's
It's
got
got
so
that
much,
atmosphere.
and then he shows up, right? It's just so eerie. There's just so many like unexplained things like, oh, does he not have a reflection in the mirror? And he's so sophisticated, even when he's like, hear them, listen to them, children of the night, how they howl for me.
He's
Like,
great, but Lucy is scarier. When
yeah,
Lucy becomes a vampire, she's way scarier because she's like a baby vampire and she doesn't really know
yeah.
what's happened to her. All she knows is she wants to drink blood, and the easiest blood to get is babies. So she's like drinking babies dry and then tossing the corpses. That that shit is chilling.
I mean, it goes down to like, yeah, you not being able to reason with them. Like, I love Freddy Krueger, but I'm more scared coming home after watching a Halloween movie. There is something about Michael Myers not talking and you not being, and I know I couldn't reason with Freddy Krueger, but I think
Yeah.
because he talks back, there
You
is
can have
like
a conversation,
I
right? At
can have
least
a
you
conversation with him.
right.
With Michael Myers or with like a silent, relentless killer, like you can't reason with them. Like your fate is sealed. There's something about the
Yeah.
inevitability of that like kills me.
Um, I just thought of another sort of iconic monster, but again, not the bad guy, but let the right one in.
Yeah.
The little girl and let the right one in. I mean, that's a classic. And what's crazy about Let the Right One In is it's been classic in every media form it's appeared in. It's a great novel. It was a great movie. The remake was great. I thought it was a huge mistake to remake because I'm like you can't really improve you know on the original. Actually, Matt Reeves killed it. He did such a great job. It's really terrific to watch. A really terrific watch. And I had a chance to see the play in London, and the
I
play
didn't
is
know it
great
was a
too.
play.
It was a terrific play, and here's what's crazy: they do the swimming pool scene.
No.
They
How?
do. They've got a tank of water on stage, and they shove the kid into it, and they don't let him out, and he's holding his breath, and he holds his breath on stage, and you're watching it, and like you're thinking they've got to let him out soon. What happens? He can't hold his breath much longer. It's been 3 minutes. I don't know how long they keep that kid underwater. He must have built up his lungs or something because I'm pretty sure they hold him underwater for almost 4 minutes, and he had to do that every single night.
Oh my god. And you just see like flailing arms and legs all around him as he's holding his breath underwater?
I'm gonna ruin it for people listening
Okay,
because it's gonna
sorry.
sound bad. All I can say is it wasn't bad, it was awesome. But the murder stuff when he's being held underwater is kind of almost like done as a dance.
Okay. I mean,
I know it sounds bad. It doesn't. It sounds really bad, but it's like you kind of when you're in the theater, you kind of go with it. You know, you get this really powerful atmospheric music, and she's sort of doing like, and the lights are all red, and she's kind of doing a dance, and there's like, and there is some blood and stuff, and so it really works on stage, but it sounds kind of stupid when you explain it.
no, I mean, I get it. You have to take different approaches to different mediums, and I feel like if you see it on stage, it would make sense. But it's just
Yeah,
such an iconic scene in the Swedish movie. I haven't seen the American remake, but the way it's shot in the Swedish movie is so good.
yeah. The uh, Look, I think the American film has a bad rap with a lot of horror films, or with a lot of horror fans, because they know how great the original is, and so they kind of don't want to be open to the American version. And again, I think it would be better to remake a mediocre film than remake a brilliant film, because of this, because people are going to be unsatisfied. But really, Matt Reeves did a great job, and the guy's never made a bad film in his life, and he did fresh, new things, and but captured the feel of the original film, and I think it's highly worth watching.
Okay. I will check it out.
I feel bad. I'm hesitating to say this because it puts me in a spot, but I think probably Pennywise, right?
I mean,
I mean, isn't Pennywise sort of like the one of the all-time greats? You
yeah.
know?
I mean, I was gonna say, like, my neighborhood does Halloween front yard decorating contest, and there is a house that has put up their front yard decor, and it is Ghostface, Michael Myers, Billy the
And the
Puppet from Saw, Chucky, and Pennywise.
and the clown.
Yeah,
The clown. Absolutely. He's iconic. He was great in the TV series, and he was great in the Andy Muschietti film, and he's extraordinary performances both times, and I mean, I think the big question is, his lasting power in people's imaginations, and people just live with Pennywise. He's in their thoughts all the time.
yeah,
And that's the mark of a really great villain.
yeah. I
So
mean, I watched the Tim Curry miniseries when I was very young, probably like 6.
too young.
Older cousins, you know how it happens. But it scarred me, and it had me, running away from storm drains, for years. I would say, like, until, like, high school, I would be, like, just stepping away, like, it really burrowed itself in there.
Uh, my wife and I had our kids to the playground today, and they were up on the second floor landing of a playset, peeking through a crack under the slide at me. It was like a narrow slot, and I could just peer up at them like they could see my eyes and nose. And I began to do my Pennywise imitation, and my wife kicked me in the ankle. I was like, "Stop that! Don't do that. That's not funny." So, I
Oh,
mean, I think he's got to be. I think if you're making a list of, the all-time great walking nightmares, if that's what a terrific horror villain is an iconic nightmare that makes the action happen. You've got to talk about Dracula, and you've got to talk about, Hannibal Lecter, probably. Um, Freddy Krueger, sure, but I think Pennywise. I think he might be right there at the top of the heap.
yeah,
Not the game from my dad or anything, but
yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, like, what do you think it is about Pennywise to have really had the staying power that he has over.
I think clowns are scary.
That's true.
Clowns have always been scary. You know that's not that it was. It's the fear is already there. It was there before Pennywise. That when you're a big kid, you laugh at clowns to show you're not frightened. When you're a little kid, you don't laugh at clowns, you just cry. And that's so I think that my dad has been ripped a few times by like the head of the Clown Association of
Oh,
America,
no.
because there's a feeling that Pennywise has kind of, poisoned the well a little bit and made something that's meant to be fun and joyous into something upsetting and frightening. But the thing is like, I think clowns were scary before Pennywise. I think that my dad was tapping into a fear that was already there.
Yeah.
Same with I mean, Spielberg famously, Jaws wrecked beach tourism for years after the film came. Not
Yeah.
just that, some people became genuinely afraid to swim in the ocean. But and so you can point to Spielberg and say, "Hey, he did that. Jaws did that to us." People were already afraid of sharks. It's not like sharks weren't scary before Jaws. Sharks definitely were scary before Jaws. It's just people were a little better about not thinking about it. But if a shark swam underneath them, they'd be running for shore. They'd be paddling for shore as fast as they could. So so the fear was already there, and I think that's true of clowns too. That there is a kind of, is this funny? Should I be running or laughing? I don't know.
Pennywise is scary, and it's funny to think because I have kids now, so I grew up scared of the Tim Curry Pennywise, and now my kids, have the Bill Skarsgård Pennywise, so it's just
Yeah.
funny that, like, both of us grew up with the same character, just different iterations of it.
Bill Skarsgård was a great Dracula too.
Yeah,
Terrific Dracula.
his little
It was a
mustache.
full
Yeah.
Monty. He was the full Monty Dracula
I mean, he has a good, horror villain oeuvre
thing going
about him.
on.
Yeah.
There's like, I think there are actually about 15 Skarsgårds, so
I
it can be a little. But isn't he also the murder bot? Is Bill Skarsgård
uh,
also the murder bot, or is that a different
no, I
Skarsgård?
think that's Alexander.
Talented family.
They're everywhere.
You could have, Robert Eggers could have cast Dracula and cast nothing but Skarsgårds.
I
Alex Skarsgård could have played Harker. Would have been great. Would have worked for me.
I mean, my son has been so, like, intrigued by Pennywise and It that he took my copy of it off my bookshelf just to read the first chapter because he told me he just needed to know what happened to Georgie or, like, what
Oh,
exactly went down.
well, now you let him.
Yeah.
I
He put it back. He was
told
like,
my
"Okay."
kids. So I have 3-year-old twins, but I had kids when I was a kid myself. So I also have 3 20-year-olds. They're all in their early 20s. And when they were little, they asked if they could read Lock and Key, and especially the early issues of Lock and Key are super R-rated. I said absolutely not until they were 13. And then my 7-year-old pulled it off the shelves and read it anyway.
That's what
As
we're
soon as
meant
I
to
wasn't in the
do.
room,
Yeah.
got a copy of the book and read it anyway.
Yeah.
So there's only
Yeah.
so much you can do.
Yeah. I know, I think I had a hard time with people who were, like, straight villains because I think the people I'm drawn to, I'm like, "I don't know, I get where they're coming from," as I was saying, so, like, I mean, like, Carrie, I'm like, "Yeah, I get where
Yeah,
she's
well,
coming from." Is she a villain? I don't think so.
yeah. I mean, you know,
Did she kill a whole high school auditorium? Why, yes.
I mean, I mean, I think that interesting characters are often characters who do terrible things, but that doesn't always make them pure villains.
Mhm.
So there's that. I think the the problem with a really, emotionally well-rounded character who makes good choices is that doesn't lead to an interesting story. The only thing you can do with a character who has it all, happy life, you know, um, happy marriage, wonderful kids, fulfilling career, someone who makes morally sound decisions. All you can do with a character like that is take it all away as fast as you can,
Yeah.
because that's something to aim for in your personal life. But in fiction, it's not very interesting,
No.
And so someone like Carrie White, who has been hounded and abused and is coming into unique powers, and in some ways is an innocent,
Mhm.
but innocence isn't always all that great. I mean, innocent little children will rip the wings off butterflies, and so she's dangerous because of her innocence in some ways, and this our feeling that she could run out of control is really gripping. It doesn't mean we don't root for or care about Carrie,
Yeah.
or identify with her. She's not a villain,
No.
right?
I
You
don't
know,
think so. Not in my book.
she's not a hero either, though.
I know. But she is iconic and we keep remaking her story. So
Yeah, exactly. On Amazon soon. Renew your Amazon Prime membership. The Carrie miniseries is coming up.
yeah. Because I was thinking even a Pinhead, who's the face of the Hellraiser series, is a very minor character in Hellbound Heart. Like I don't even think he's really named. He's just described. Like he is not the Pinhead that he is in
Yeah,
Hellraiser.
yeah. The Cenobites. Well, that's like sometimes sometimes with the film, if you look into an iconic visual, then you've got something you can run on for a while. When um, Scott Derrickson was making the Black Phone,
Mhm.
there was a point at which I saw the mask that the grabber was going to wear,
Oh yeah.
and well before they started shooting the film, well before they rolled any film at all, I saw the mask and I thought, oh, there could be a whole bunch of these movies. There might not just be one black phone. There might be a bunch of black phones because people are going to like that mask. They're
Yeah.
going to want to, like, the grabber might turn into a character who's kind of like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, where we're hoping he'll return for, to sow more chaos. Um, and this is my cue to note, hey kids, the Black Phone is coming up. Black Phone 2 is in theaters near you. I believe it opens on October 17th, but it's not too early. You can go ahead and get your tickets right now.
Yeah. Get on it.
It's going to be
Uh
awesome. It is
oh
awesome.
my
I've seen the film. It's terrific.
oh, that's so
I
cool.
feel good about it.
That's great to hear. I loved the first Black Phone.
Oh, thanks. Well, the second film is really scary, goes really hard, and in some ways it does have some echoes of the first film,
Yeah.
but in some ways it's a completely new, unique thing. Nothing like the first one, and I think, I think that was pretty ballsy that they
Yeah.
just went for it, and so they're like, we're not just going to rehash the first one. If we got a story to tell, we're going to do something fresh, and exciting and unique. Um, and really scary. So I
Yeah.
think people are going to dig it. I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful too. I mean, people loved the first Black Phone.
Well, it's also anchored by some really great performances. That kid Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw are terrific. How weird is it that Madeline McGraw was in the Black Phone, and then like 3 weeks later, her sister was in Megan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like they were in two of the biggest horror films of that year, and those two
Wow.
films came out back to back, and it's like the two sisters.
That's so cool.
Pretty amazing.
I mean, I also loved Charlie Manx and Nosferatu,
Well,
especially
thank you.
and I mean, I was telling you earlier, I listened to the audiobook. Kate Mulgrew's Charlie Manx voice lives rent free in my head. Like
Yeah.
she
See,
really brought
Charlie
it.
was fun to write about. Charlie made things happen.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning, I knew he was going to make the story move. That he was going to be, he was going to give me a lot of good material to write about. So, yeah, Manx and King Sorrow were both are as villains go, are both pretty dynamic figures in the sense of they've got plans of their own. They're working all the angles.
But Manx has Vic McQueen coming for. I do.
Yeah, Vic was cool too. She was fun to spend time with. I mean, that was another long one. Nosferatu, the Fireman, and King Sorrow were all three big chonkers.
Yeah.
Um, but they're also probably my last chonkers for a while. Hunger is much shorter. Hunger is about the book that'll be out in 2026 is probably a third of the length of King Sorrow. It's going to come in at about, when it's published, it'll be like a 320-page hardcover. When I turned 50 a little while ago, I thought, what do I want my 50s to look like? And I thought, I want to see if I can write a book a year. Never done that. I've always had a lot going on. I have short stories and comics and screenplays and stuff. But I thought, what would it be like if I really tried to focus on getting one book done a year? Could I do that? And I think I can. So far, I'm on track. but I can't. They can't all be King Sorrow length, or
No.
that would break me. I can't, it's
No.
impossible. So the books have to go back to being sort of the size they were when I did Heart Shaped Box and Horns. But that's fun too. I mean, I think that it's great to do a bunch of work at a bunch of different lengths and a bunch of different mediums.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people are excited for whatever you have coming up next.
I hope they have fun with this one. And it was almost 10 years in between Fireman and King Sorrow, but won't be such a long wait for the next one.
And I'm sure that was like quite a process. And I mean, I can't imagine working on something for that long. I mean, do you ever get to a point where you're like, I can't look at this anymore. I have to step away.
No, no. I mean, in some ways, writing a novel is easier than writing short stories because a short story gets done and then you got to think of something else.
Yeah.
With a novel, it's like going back to visit your friends.
Hmm.
There's a sort of comfort and familiarity there. And King Sorrow was built around 6 friends, but the friendship group expands as time goes on. So actually, there are 2 other characters, Robin Fellows and Tana Nicewander,
Yeah.
who are sort of seem to be peripheral characters, but become a little more important as the story goes on. And then there's King Sorrow himself. There's also a poltergeist named Elwood Hondo, and a troll named Stu Finger. Right, it's Stuart Finger is the troll. And it's got a big cast of characters. But I liked all those people. I liked every single one of them. I liked to
Yeah.
hear what I liked sitting down and getting them talking and hearing what they had to talk about today, or seeing what kind of trouble they were going to get themselves into next, because they sure were good at finding trouble. One day it's a drunken battle on roller skates, and the next day one of them is trying to desperately dig out survivors from a building collapse.
You truly never know what you're gonna find.
Every day's an adventure.
Well, one of the traditions we have on the podcast is to ask for a chilling obsession. So, what is something you have been enjoying in horror lately?
Well, I'm going to give you 2 chilling obsessions for the price of one.
Great.
So first of all, a great movie, one of my very favorite films of the year, ferociously frightening and also really intelligent. There's a horror film on Shudder called Dangerous Animals.
Okay.
Highest possible recommendation. Probably the best shark movie since Jaws.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and there have been some good shark movies. There's nothing anywhere near in the same league as Jaws. But The Shallows was pretty good. Deep Blue Sea was pretty good. I actually liked Jaws 2. I thought Jaws 2 was a great slasher movie.
47
Um,
meters down,
7
47
meters
meters
down. Right.
down, I'm
So
caged.
there has been some great stuff. Wait, do we mention Under Paris?
No.
Sharks in the Catacombs. But so there have been some great shark films, but I think Dangerous Animals is the best since Jaws. And there are some things in the movie that I think are almost an answer to Jaws, almost like it's almost in conversation with Jaws in a really
Really?
interesting way. Also, killer soundtrack, smoking great soundtrack. So that would be my film recommendation. And then in terms of a book recommendation, I'd say check out Keith Rawson's Coffin Moon,
Oh, okay.
which is earlier in the program we talked about Rovers by Richard Lang, which is a vampire novel set in the mid 70s. Um, Coffin Moon is also set in the mid 70s and is also about vampires and vengeance. Um, and it's just got this. It's just Keith is such a great writer. Every page is just so much fun to read. He writes such great sentences, and he evokes the time beautifully. Terrific characters, and just a really tense, you know, furious vampire revenge story. So again, one of my very favorite books of the year. Top recommendation.
That's been on my list.
Yeah, put it right on the top of the pile. It's worth it. And
Okay.
it's one of these books you blow through it in 4 days, and you're like, you wish it was twice as long.
I love that. Well, the second tradition we have on the podcast is to ask our guests for a final girl song. So if you're the last one standing in a horror movie covered in blood, what is your song?
I mean, it's already been done, and I feel bad ripping it off, but you got to have Blue Moon from the end of American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
That was the greatest ending song to a horror film ever. So I think yeah, if I'm standing there, I'm just painted crimson with blood from head to toe, and I've got the chainsaw in one hand, and there's body parts littered all around. I want to hear that, I want to hear Blue Moon.
Perfect.
Classic.
Yeah. All right, I will add it to the playlist. I keep a playlist of everyone's answers.
Is it on Spotify?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna check it out.
It's called BITF for Books in the Freezer, BITF Final Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people have picked stuff that's already been used in movies. Like I Think We're Alone Now.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for
Stephanie,
coming
this
on
was a
here.
blast. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for talking villains with me and
It's a
talking
great
about
time.
King Sorrow.
Well, I'm grateful you had me on. It sure was fun talking horror with you. Let's do it again sometime.
Books in the Freezer is a bi weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Books in the Freezer, or send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com. Show notes for this episode and all previous episodes are available at booksinthefreezer.com. And if you are looking for a way to support the podcast, I would recommend checking out our Patreon community at patreon.com/booksinthefreezer, where you can get access to things like early ad-free releases of episodes and access to bonus material like our new series, The House at the End of Fear Street, where we are making our way through R.L. Stine's Fear Street novels. And let me tell you, it has been a ride. I have been your host, Stephanie Gagne. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.